Within the cultural setting of an Australian society post-Second World War, a necessity for an Australian identity was now more than ever realised through the introduction of modernism. This film intends to explore the lives of historic designer Harry Seidler and contemporary designer Glenn Murcutt and highlight the influences modernism had on their designs, as well as identify the impact they both had on modernism and Australian architecture today. The piece will highlight designs including Seidler's Rose House and Murcutt's Magnay House to visually display the designer's capacity to employ modernist materials and principles, whilst also understanding the altering social, political, economical, and cultural effects Australian society was left with following the war. Following the horrors of the World War period, the need for change in lifestyle was felt amongst the Australian society, and the introduction of modernism aimed to fulfill this need and provide a new way of living for the average Australian. Culturally, modernism aimed to find new ways to do old things within art, literature, music, and overall lifestyle, and the design and architectural side of modernism adapted its ways to fit this new lifestyle of living through the incorporation of rapidly growing science and technologies. Both the social and economical effects largely influenced the modernist design field, as low-cost, high-quality community living was seen as the ideal living scenario. Modernism turned to incorporating different variations of futurism, constructivism, and Bauhaus through introducing open and well-defined floor plans that used clean, minimal lines and asymmetrical design features, with large glass walls and modern building materials to complete an overall modern architectural feel of the design. And finally, from a political perspective, a change was needed, and modernism was seen as a start to increase Australia's standard of living and allow a smooth transition into life post-war. Commonly known as the father of Australian modernism, Harry Seidler was born in Vienna in 1923 and received a high level of education, attending schools in England, Canada, and America, before moving to Australia at the age of 25 to pursue his career as a designer and architect. Seidler was one of the first people to employ modernist materials and principles within his buildings, and many of the design features he incorporated pioneered the growth of modernism and shaped the overall lifestyle of Australian living today. He continued to design and follow his passion his whole life until he unfortunately passed away on the 9th of March in 2006 in Sydney, Australia. Seidler can be seen to have influenced a number of people with his intricate designs, one being Glenn Murcutt, who was born in London in 1936. His parents gave birth to him while completing a world tour, so Glenn spent most of his younger years travelling around the world. The commencement of World War II forced the Murcutt family to move back to Australia, and this is where Glenn was raised. In 1956, Murcutt began a part-time architecture course at the Sydney Technical College. He then graduated in 1962 and travelled to Europe, where he was able to work with the modernist architecture firm Ian Fraser, and further ignite his passion for modernist design. He went on to design a large number of buildings throughout his lifetime, and is currently still alive at the age of 85, and continues to win architectural prizes for his important part in modernism and the modernist Australian lifestyle. The Rose House was one of Seidler's earlier designs and was completed in 1950 as a family house for Harry's parents Rose and Max. Following its completion, the house was very popular amongst designers as well as the general public. The design can be seen as a perfect inclusion and envisionment of the modernist movement, and visually displays true modernity, while simultaneously remaining true to the culture and the land and preservation of the beauty of the Australian environment. The Rose House is still today described as one of the finest examples of mid-20th century modern domestic architecture in Australia, and is a perfect example of the designer that Harry Seidler was. The Rose House that is currently being displayed here shows the use of the modernistic design materials and elements. Seidler's use of an asymmetrical exterior that includes clean, minimal geometry perfectly fits the modernistic feel, which the use of large windows and modern materials also adds. The use of colour and tone can also evidently be seen to directly match the surrounding environment, and is a credit to Seidler as a designer. Harry and Penelope Seidler's house is another example of the vast ability Seidler had as a modernist designer. The building was designed by Seidler as a family home for himself and his wife Penelope, and was completed in the year 1967 in the Sydney suburb Killara. The house further employs the modernist design way that Seidler pioneered, and ingeniously hides the luxurious size and magnitude of the design from the front, as the trees and environmental surroundings and landscape allow for the large-scale property to be seen as discreet at first glance. The Killara house won the 1967 Wilkinson Award, and provided Seidler with more attention, which further advanced his concept of Australian modernism. Seidler used an open floor plan when designing this house, which directly relates to the ideals of a luxurious lifestyle that modernism promotes. The house was also able to use large amounts of concrete and glass for the exterior and interior materials, which allowed the overall feel of a high-quality home to be established. The house is also evidently well incorporated with its surrounding environment, and uses the surroundings to add to its stunning appearance. Glenn Murcutt was a contemporary modernist designer who, despite not playing a part in the beginning of the modernist period, took great inspiration from modernity in the design world, and used inspiration from many of the pioneers of modernism, including Seidler, in his many projects and architectural adventures. Murcutt's designs encapsulated the post-war design method of architecture, whilst maintaining his own brand of design that followed his beliefs and illustrated his passion as seen in the construction of his Magnay house. The Magnay house, built in 1982 to 84, was one of his greatest designs. Murcutt built this house as a retreat for him, his family, and friends. The beauty of this design is how well it fit with the surroundings and how it was able to integrate the architecture with the environment. The Magnay house really displays the modernist viewpoint of finding a new way to do old things, as the house illustrates the feel and shape of an isolated old barn on a hill, when in reality, the visual communication is a luxurious, environmentally conscious living space. The images being shown of the Magnay house really speak volume of the intelligence Murcutt used when designing it. He was able to design the building with the modernist design based on the post-war impression of modernism, as well as adding his own touch of environmentalism and world care. Murcutt designed the roof of the barn in an asymmetrical V-shape, not only to uphold the principles of modernism, but to allow the rainfall to be recycled and reused to create a self-sufficient water source. His care for the environment and understanding for the need of intellectual growth within modern design allowed him to add his own touch on modernism and inspire adaptation for the next generation of designers. Through the discussion of post-war modernism and its direct effect on design and architecture, it is evident that historical designers such as Harry Seidler have greatly impacted Australian lifestyle as we see it today. They have also played an important role in advancing the design movement and influencing individuals such as Glenn Murcutt and other contemporary designers to continue on from the foundation they have set, whilst encouraging adaptation and advancements be introduced so they can too influence the next generation of designers, allowing the thriving spirit of modernist design and architecture to continue to expand exponentially.